The national parks are Britain's most beautiful landscapes. Rolling hills, wide lakes, panoramic views. They are places to relax and inspire you.
I didn't know there was anywhere like this. It's absolutely fantastic.
The Peak District is the oldest of our 15 national parks. In creating it after the Second World War, the government was giving to the nation a place that everyone could enjoy. Today, the Peak District is becoming a victim of its own success. It has 10 million visitors a year.
Yes, I've been a long time ago, but I don't remember it as it is now. It seems different.
Many of those come from the huge surrounding conurbations of Manchester, Sheffield and Birmingham.
Have you ever had a nasty fall?
No, not in 20 years. Touch wood.
The park is also home to nearly 40,000 people. These chocolate box villages are what have helped make the Peak District so famous. All these people want different things from this one precious piece of land, and that creates conflict.
Hey, stop! You nearly knocked me down. All you want to do is represent the tourists.
I spent a year filming in the Peak District. I want to find out who this national park is really for.
We've all walked here to send a strong message.
Do you think it's moving when you look? Does it move you to look at that view?
Yes. It's the first time and it's beautiful.
It's peaceful, isn't it? So peaceful.
It is. It's the tranquility, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And also, I suppose, the sheer scale of it.
Mm-hmm.
In July 2010, I arrive in Great Longstone, a typical charming village in the heart of the Peak District National Park. It's home to around 800 people. It has 2 pubs and a shop which closes each day for lunch. Joyce Poulter has lived in the village for nearly 40 years.
Hello. Hiya. Morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely day, isn't it?
She's a retired primary school teacher.
Well, I think I'll have some brownie cookies. We like those. And I think John might like some custard creams.
Joyce is not your typical 80-year-old. She's an activist.
We're trying to get some people involved and try to do something about it.
Right, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
If anybody mentions it to you in the shop, you know, just send them in our direction, because John and I are, you know, speaking for it at the moment. Yeah. We've not really got established. Yeah.
Like most country villages, Great Longstone has a little lane that winds its way down the side of the village. It's called Chirpit Lane. It's just under 2 miles long. The villagers love this lane. For generations, they've walked their dogs and ridden their horses up it. But all that has changed. Although it's not a tarmacked road, Chirpit Lane is classified as a byway open to all traffic, or BOAT for short. It's being used throughout the year by off-roading enthusiasts, driving 4x4s and riding trail bikes. And the villagers don't like it.
Beautiful day, isn't it?
It's absolutely perfect.
Joyce's campaign is to get the off-roaders banned from Chirpit Lane.
We're just so angry the way that it's now been opened to all vehicles. Trail bikes, 4x4s, anything that anybody wants to drive along here. And it's just ridiculous. It's made it so difficult for the people who've been using it, the walkers, the horse riders and the cyclists. This part of the track now, where it's steep and stony, loose stones, is now quite dangerous for cyclists. And we've heard several say they won't come again. People are not able to walk up in peace and calm. And it's upsetting. Stop.
You okay?
Yeah. I shall get emotional.
Some of Joyce's neighbours in the village share her view and see the off-roaders as unwelcome and a bit scary, like Sue and Chris Woods.
How do you feel when you see them, Sue?
Well, I'd prefer they weren't there, but I can accept that if they are where they're legally entitled to be and behave responsibly,
yes,
I've got to grin and bear it.
Yeah.
Although, as I say, I would prefer that the law was changed.
At the Gundries, they believe they are a menace to society.
Hello? I wouldn't want to get involved in a real confrontation with them. You know, I wouldn't want to obstruct them.
Well, a local phrase I have had used against me is, keep your neb out.
In August, a month after I first met Joyce, she's holding a recruitment drive in her village pub for her new campaign. Her husband John is chairing the meeting.
5 minutes past the starting time. I know you're in shock because you see me in a suit and a collar and tie, and it's nothing to do with the fact we've got television here. It's just that I thought we'd celebrate. I never thought that we'd have a meeting like this, setting up a formal organisation with all sorts of allies all over the country.
Joyce is giving the campaign a name with a double meaning.
And rocking the boat, I think, is something that can be remembered by most people. And the boat business, of course, refers to the bridleway open to all... Byway open to all traffic, which, of course, refers to Chirpit Lane.
The campaign will include letter writing, meetings and monitoring of off-roaders on Chirpit Lane. But Joyce has got a warning for her new recruits.
You may think that that's a welcome signal, but it wasn't. And the person who took the photograph got out of their way quickly because he realised that he was vulnerable. Your safety is paramount. So we're not asking you to take photographs, take number plates even, or anything else. We're asking you, please, just to record what you see.
The villagers of Great Longstone are getting organised and mobilised, and they are determined to defend their lane. Chirpit Lane is one of up to 300 green lanes in the Peak District. Many are open to traffic because they've been deemed roads since medieval times. Getting the law changed on a lane can be costly and difficult because the off-roaders know their legal rights. One of those is Richard Entwistle, who lives in Chesterfield, just outside the park. He's part of the Peak District Vehicle Users Group, or PD-VUG, as it's known.
What is it that does it for you?
I think it's the skill of being able to get the vehicle to cope with the terrain. Because obviously the vehicle's very competent, but it still needs skill to drive it.
I think I'm more worried about your vehicle than you.
Richard knows some villagers in Great Longstone are out to get him and his friends banned from Chirpit Lane, so he wants to try and appease them at a large public meeting in the village in 2 weeks' time. Difficult diplomatic situations are nothing new to Richard.
You've got a background as a negotiator.
Well, I was an officer in the Territorial Army for 22 years. So that obviously stands me in good stead for getting up in front of people and saying what has to be said. There's sheep down there.
Just wait here till the sheep have gone in there, please.
Yes, I just spotted them.
What are you filming?
Oh, it's a BBC documentary.
About sheep?
No.
No.
Thank God for that.
Sadly, for you.
Me?
Can I ask you, what's your view about the use of the green lanes for off-road vehicles?
They're a pain in the backside.
That evening, Richard Entwistle and some other off-roaders are on Chirpit Lane preparing for the meeting with the villagers of Great Longstone. They have a legal right to drive down the lane any time of day or night, and any compromise they offer will be out of the kindness of their hearts. The villagers complain that the lane is too narrow for vehicles to use, but Richard and his team have a simple solution to that problem.
Oh, right, yes.
They're going to offer to cut back the blackthorn bushes.
You can see the distance here as to how much it restricts the lane.
The locals are concerned because of vehicles and pedestrians meeting down here. Where do the pedestrians go? People walking their dogs and such like. And we're saying, well, if the road was its proper width, there wouldn't be any more problem than most of Derbyshire's narrow lanes. So we've thought we'll investigate whether we can do something about it.
The end of that is 9 feet in. I mean, that's 5 feet, plus the length of my arm.
Well, the most efficient way of doing it probably to have one of us firing off with chainsaw.
Right, should we continue down a bit? This is the main bit though to concentrate on where it's narrowest.
And then we can do some more here as well.
We'll see where we are.
We're going to start with the Great Longstone village meeting.
After the lane, the off-roaders retire to a pub to discuss the forthcoming meeting with the village.
Their meeting is primarily to persuade us motorists to put a voluntary restraint whereby 4x4s don't use the lane at all and motorbikes only use it in the winter.
That's quite a radical sort of change from a legal byway open to all traffic.
It certainly is.
So they wanted us to give way to them,
Yes.
aren't they? You know, it's been proved that it's a legal right of way for all users.
In actual fact, we're giving them more offers than they're giving us. They're giving us nothing really, are they?
So
They are united in the view that they don't need to offer anything more than cutting back the blackthorn.
I put this proposition to Owen.
It's the end of September, the day of the meeting between the Great Longstone villagers and the off-road motorists. Joyce is at the hall early. Another villager called Diana turns up with what looks like a bag of scrap.
I've got another lovely mudguard at home which I couldn't manage on my bike. So I've got the...
Each time Diana takes a stroll on Chirpit Lane, she picks up bits of broken vehicle. She's brought them all along tonight as damning evidence of the damage the off-roaders are causing.
I'll bring down the mudguard when I come walking.
Oh, good, good.
You okay?
Thank you, Diana.
Okay.
See you later.
See you later. Yes.
What do you think of the evidence?
Well, I have seen it before, but I think it's probably a little bit more now, because she seems to find some every time she goes up there.
Slowly, the hall fills up. It seems the whole village has turned out.
Welcome, everybody. Fantastic turnout. Are you going to come in?
Joyce's husband John is chairing the meeting.
You've just been hovering. Apologies to everybody.
Yeah, it's all right.
Last to arrive is Richard Entwistle and his off-roading friends.
Anybody else come in? Yes, please. Come in.
Thanks, John.
I want to emphasise that these guys have every legal right to drive up and down Chirpit Lane. Remember, they didn't have to come here tonight. They didn't have to make an offer. I think you're going to make an offer. Of some sort, anyway.
Nobody in the room knows what the motorists will offer.
And I shall try and keep in order with this Swiss bell. OK, you've got 20 minutes or so if you wish.
I don't think I'll be that long.
OK.
But, yeah, as motorists, we perceive that a substantial problem on Chirpit Lane in particular is the blackthorn that's crept over about 3/4 of the lane for 50 yards or so. We're looking into ways of getting rid of it, make it safer for everybody, make it usable for the likes of horse riders.
That's going part way.
Richard's offer has gone down like a lead balloon.
These good people, they expected something a bit more than cutting back blackthorn, I'm sorry to say.
OK, yes.
It has fruit on it. Right.
Blackthorn?
Yes. Slow gin.
It will do, yes.
So if you cut it back, some of the locals won't be able to go slows.
It is growing in a public highway. Yes, it is. It is, yes it is.
Horses have ridden these tracks for centuries.
It wouldn't be appropriate for me to drive a motorbike through your front room any more than it's appropriate for you to drive your 4x4s up a narrow lane like that.
For 5 minutes thrill driving down Chirpit Lane, you destroy our lives. And I don't know why you don't understand that, because it actually isn't something I'm sure you would want to have happening outside your house.
Your activity destroys the pleasure of the vast majority of people who are part of the national park.
Cutting it back a little bit of blackthorn, it's not a pea in the ocean, mate. And most of the people that I know despise you lot. You're nothing, mate. You're nothing. There's millions of walkers, and we're dead against you lot.
The meeting ends with no agreement about Chirpit Lane. If Rocking the Boat wants to get off-roaders banned, they will now have to use the law. As residents of a national park, they hope the law will be on their side. There are 15 national parks in the UK, but the Peak District is the oldest. Some people have been visiting since it was designated in 1951.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. We're just doing some filming for the BBC.
Right.
Sorry?
You sure you're from BBC?
Do I not look respectable?
I thought it was not really.
This is somewhere you've all been to, is it, before?
Yes, I've been a long time ago, but I don't remember it as it is now.
Oh,
it seems different.
How's it changed?
Goodness knows, I don't know. It seems bigger. Yeah. It's just different.
The origins of the national parks in Great Britain can be traced back to before the Second World War. In 1932, when Kinder Scout in the Peak District was entirely privately owned, a group of ramblers from Manchester staged a mass trespass there. They demanded the rights for ordinary people to walk in open countryside. A few years later, the first national parks were created, and they were built on the guiding principle that everyone should be able to enjoy the countryside. It's this principle which underpins the work of the Peak District National Park Authority, and its head ranger is Sean Prendergast.
We've got a plaque in a quarry in a car park, right? And the story of this place is intrinsically linked with the history of the Peak District National Park. People battled in the 30s to gain access to these places because they thought that these places should belong to everybody.
Today, Sean has to deal with contemporary conflicts over the landscape, such as that on Chirpit Lane.
You know, the residents of Great Longstone, that's their village, and they want, you know, tranquility, they want a quiet life, if you like. You know, they see outsiders coming in and destroying. They see outsiders coming in and destroying part of their village. The other side of that coin, the off-roaders are saying, well, hang on a minute, this is an ancient right, it's our right, we just want to exercise that right. Now, they're two extremes. Bringing those two extremes together is difficult.
The Peak District Park Authority is based in an old manor house in Bakewell. Sean's small team is tucked away in an annex. It's their job to manage the park's 300 green lanes.
This is the access and rights of way team, right?
His second in command is Mike Rhodes.
We're trying to do our best to manage a very difficult situation. People do get very upset and very passionate about what's happening in the Peak District. We have to, as Sean has said, we have to try and take the middle ground, and we sometimes get a bit of a bashing for it, but hey-ho.
When you've got opposing views, you're always going to be on the wrong side of one of those views, whatever you do.
Sean's team use this Rights of Way Bible to assess every road going back to the days of horse and cart. It's these ancient laws which the off-roaders refer to when demanding their rights to use the green lanes.
Is it a good read?
I wouldn't say I've read it. That sounds like I sit there in the bath reading it cover to cover, which isn't the case. I do refer to it quite a lot, yeah.
I'm surprised there's not a dart on that map where Chirpit Lane is.
No, because Churchill Lane is one of the many threads. One of the many threads we have to address in this rich tapestry we call rights of way management.
Sean's boss at the Park Authority is Chief Executive Jim Dixon. He tells me it's the park's policy to only ban off-roaders as an absolute last resort because they have as much right to enjoy the landscape as everybody else.
Everybody has rights in this today.
It's a complex issue.
It's a complex issue, and everyone has rights. And to just simply say nobody should be allowed to drive vehicles on roads in the national park would be a kind of draconian response that would cause more problems than it would resolve. Equally, allowing anyone to drive any vehicle anywhere is going to cause upset for a lot of people. We know it is. It is now.
Left behind. Oh.
At the end of October, John and Joyce and the rest of Rocking the Boat are back on Chirpit Lane.
Sorry, Joyce, just explain the whistle again.
I'm wearing a whistle because I've been appointed the safety officer for this morning.
Right, oh, I see.
And if I hear any motorbikes or 4x4s, you see them all run.
After the disappointment of the meeting with Richard Entwistle and the off-roaders, they are taking matters into their own hands.
2 metres actual.
2 metres effective, right?
Yes.
They are measuring the lane's narrowest points and doing a survey of people using it.
That's wall to wall.
They are putting together a case for a traffic regulation order which will ban motorists. TROs, as they are known, are usually applied by the local council. But in a national park, the Park Authority also has the power to enforce one, but only if the environment is being damaged.
Is that a bike I can hear? I can hear a bike. Get the whistle out.
Hey, stop!
This is the first time I've seen trail bikers and walkers come face to face. It feels tense.
Go steady, please. Single file. That's what we do. Well, I want to see one of yours. Yeah. So you tell him off. Okay.
As they drive past, I hear a scream further up the lane.
Did you get the one that nearly took Joyce?
Yes, I got Joyce's number. What, did he shout at you, Joyce? Did he shout at you?
Yes, he did.
He nearly knocked me down.
He said, "What are you doing?" Joyce's feet were there and he was in this track.
And what happened?
I had to fall back more or less onto the bank.
John calls the police.
Oh, good morning. I'd like to report some difficult, dangerous motoring on Chirpit Lane in Great Longstone, please.
By the time the snow comes in November, I learn that similar battles to that over Chirpit Lane are taking place throughout the park. I hear of confrontations between walkers and off-roaders on other lanes. Derbyshire Police Force has been aware of the problem on green lanes for some time, and it's set up Operation Blackbrook, which is being run by PC Kevin Lowe.
What a view. Aren't I privileged to work here?
Kevin's job is to make sure the off-roaders are keeping to the legal routes and that they obey traffic regulations.
Okay, just run my little thing over here just to see if we're licensed. Yeah, we could really do with a bigger number plate on there, couldn't we? All 4 sides in that square, okay?
Yep.
And it applies to you. Oh! There we go. That's a real no-no, isn't it?
Too small.
We require one of those letters to touch, as near as possible, all 4 sides. okay, to be a proper prescribed registration plate, and it isn't. Are you confident that your horns work, your lights work?
Yep.
Yeah?
100%. Horn.
Again. Yours, sir.
You can hear it go click, and that's it. It's not making a proper noise now.
Okay. Well, that's not acceptable, is it?
No.
No.
At all.
No. What I'm going to have to do now is get my little book out.
Cool.
And I don't really think this part is appropriate for the camera, because I'm going to get my book out now. Okay? What's your date of birth?
29.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You'll notice this month I've come equipped.
Every few months, PC Lowe chairs a public meeting at Bakewell Town Hall, where he reports back on the success of Operation Black
Here
Book.
to answer questions on behalf of the National Park is the access and rights of way.
At this meeting, the panel also consists of Mike Rhodes from the Park Authority and Neil Hickman, the County Council's Assistant Director of Highways. The audience includes people from Great Longstone, but there are people from other villages throughout the park too. Joyce has come equipped with the results of Rocking the Boat's Chirpit Lane survey. She wants to get a traffic regulation order put on it.
Chirpit Lane becomes too narrow for four-wheeled vehicles. The photographs show 4 Land Rovers driving down Chirpit Lane and passing 2 walkers who have been pressed into the wall to avoid injury. The Land Rovers didn't stop. Imagine what would have happened if the other users that afternoon had been walkers with children, people with limited mobility, or horse riders. For safety reasons, please, will you put a road traffic order on Chirpit Lane?
I can't give you any assurance that Chirpit Lane will be subject to a TRO or even subject to us attempting a TRO because I don't know the full story behind it. I would need to look into that further.
I just hope we don't have to wait for an accident to happen.
The man from the council says he cannot help Joyce.
So if they want to start and put some of the damage right...
Now the people in the audience focus their attack on Mike Rhodes from the Park Authority. The authority has a duty to look after the environment and can ban off-roaders on these grounds. But because it won't do so, the residents here are getting angry.
Yes, sir.
Will the Peak Park commit themselves to revisiting the issue of TROs? Because we understand that to put a TRO on using the Peak Park's own figures costs less than £6,000.
All I can say is that the policy as it stands clearly states that we must distinguish a lack of maintenance from an environmental impact. And where there is lack of maintenance, the National Park Authority is not going to bail the Highway Authority out.
The statutory duty of the Peak Park is to protect the environment. You know, you do have the resources. What we're hearing is that people senior in the Peak Park National Park have said, well, if they are degraded, the environment's degraded, it's not our fault, it's Derbyshire County Council. It just doesn't square with your duty to protect the Peak Park.
The Park Authority's view is that damage to a green lane is more likely to be a maintenance issue than an environmental matter. But the audience won't accept this from Mike Rhodes.
Yes, madam.
If there's no resources dedicated to it, and in light of everything you said, I don't understand how the Peak Park thinks it's carrying out its responsibilities under the legislation.
I have to deal with the budget I'm given, and that's all I get.
You're the last question, Mr. Newry. You're on.
The law's got to be changed. The police can't change the law, but we, the people, can, and we, the people, will.
It dawns on me as this meeting draws to a close. The arguments are less between the off-roaders and the residents, but more between the residents and the Park Authority.
We're going to get the grips with the Peak Park. They need to have a whole new view of what goes on in the Peak Park.
Maybe this is where the real conflict lies.
Thank you.
As December approaches, the conflict over green lanes is gaining momentum, and it's the Park Authority in the firing line. Stony Middleton, Pindale, Abney, many villages are reporting problems with off-roaders on their green lanes.
What they do, they back in and pull them out with a rope, and then somebody else has a go. I was worried about they're going to knock my walls down.
I hear of one farmer called Jeff Eyre who is so angry about off-roaders on his land, he started filming them.
That's what it was like when I drove round 10 years ago. That's the state of the lane, about 8 years later. I can really...
Jeff believes the Park Authority should do more.
For some reason, they just feel that people can just come and play and they don't want to upset them. But recreation seems to be a free-for-all.
The festive season arrives, but I'm getting a sense of growing tension amongst the inhabitants of the park.
As we forgive those who trespass against us.
More villages are following Joyce Poulter's example in Great Longstone and starting their own campaign groups. In Abney, Mark Everard has organised a group which wants to get off-roaders banned throughout the park. Once again, the campaigners target the Park Authority.
This isn't true of all the officers or all the members, but there are enough within the organisation who would rather keep their head down, not do anything, and allow damage and the rest to occur because it's easier that way.
It's not just villages. Other campaign groups are also springing up throughout the park, like Peak Horsepower, led by Patricia Stubbs.
The Peak Park has a legal duty to protect the environment. The legislation that set it up talks about tranquility and the tranquil enjoyment of the countryside. We seem to have got ourselves in a situation where anything goes in a national park, and I cannot believe that was the intention when national parks were created.
Then, in January, all these disparate groups decide to unite. Horse riders, walkers, villagers, they are coming together to create one big campaign group called the Green Lanes Alliance. Its simple aim is to rid off-roaders from the Peak District forever. The first meeting is held in secret at the Crispin pub in Great Longstone.
What's happening in there is that we're trying to form a coalition of organisations and individuals to work Peak Park wide. So we're on a very boring constitutional wrangle about whether the constitution should include words such as Peak National Park or Peak District. But I think it's just not the right sort of meeting for television. That's what they feel.
At the next Operation Blackbrook meeting, chaired by PC Kevin Lowe,
I'd like to put it in now, if you don't mind, sir.
tempers flare.
I support tourist industry, and we don't like to see folk coming in 4x4s and motorbikes and destroying it all. It's a damn disgrace.
Mr Dixon gave a long reply talking about this report and that report, none of which is substantiated. And our concern is that lack of leadership from Peak Park.
On this occasion, the chief executive of the park, Jim Dixon, has come along to defend his authority against the accusations of the campaigners.
I mean, there's a bit of a fog of misleading coming there, I'm afraid. And it's a myth to say nothing's been done. All this guff, frankly, it's simply not true, Professor Everard. It's very, very easy to spin a story that tells the people that are listening to you that somehow things are not right. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the update on... Let's look at the facts and the update on the practical work that Mike and Andy and the team are doing.
At the moment, there isn't a single TRO. A consultation.
It lists very specifically, it lists specifically the action that's been taken. What you wish to see done has not necessarily been done because other more effective things have been done.
Right. You've set the question.
Jim Dixon's team has identified 24 lanes which need attention. The authority is part of a working group which considers each of these lanes, and this group includes horse riders, walkers, off-roaders and people from the council. This track has been resurfaced by the council, and the Park Authority has put in place a one-way system for the off-roaders.
These Fords here were a real bomb site, weren't they? It was really chewed up here. And as you can see, 100% sustainable. I would expect zero maintenance required on this section.
There is another route where the Peak District National Park Authority is helping walkers and cyclists, and it's about to be reopened after 40 years. The Monsell Tunnels project will allow people to get from Bakewell to Buxton along an old railway line without ever being disturbed by cars or trail bikes.
Yeah.
The 20-mile route includes 4 miles of atmospheric old tunnels.
Just about.
Sean Prendergast is overseeing it.
It's a great feeling, isn't it? You know, eerie.
So this is going to be for people who want to cycle, is it?
This will be, you'll be able to cycle from Bakewell right the way through, almost into Buxton itself. Just think of something where you can go 15, 20 miles without encountering a car.
Do you not think it's a bit eerie to drive through as a young child?
I think it'll be fantastic. As long as it's 100% safe, then the apprehension is part of the thrill, part of the reason for doing it.
By opening up this old railway line, beautiful parts of the park are being revealed to visitors for the first time in many years.
So you can't access this normally?
You've never been able to get up here because that tunnel was closed, that tunnel was closed, this piece was just closed off. So it's 40 years since any member of the public will have seen that. So now they can come along, they can look at it, they can admire it, and especially on a summer's day, just sit and watch, and you get moorhens and you get coots and everything down in the bottom there.
Is that the definition to you of tranquility?
Ah, no. Tranquility is about a state of mind.
It's a bit like meditation then.
Sounds very hippie-ish, doesn't it? You know, I'm a solid working class northern lad, but we don't meditate, but we think about things. That's what it is. And it just gives you a chance to think about things.
You wouldn't want to be typecast as a meditator.
I don't look like a meditator, do I? I look more like a pie eater. Well, let's call you meditator.
Where can you go? Where can you go and get a better view than that?
It is quite a priceless view, isn't it?
It's lovely. Lovely.
How old were you when you first saw this view?
I would be maybe just after the war, because I was born 1937.
I noticed that a lot of these benches have plaques on them.
Yes.
And I suppose you'd be a candidate for a plaque.
I'm not ready for a plaque yet.
At the start of February, the newly formed Green Lanes Alliance gets its first big test. A green lane called Hawks Hill Road, which sits next to the village of Eyam, is under dispute. Today, a public inquiry is being held to decide if the off-roaders can continue to use Hawks Hill Road. The Green Lanes Alliance has sent a delegation of its top campaigners, but so has Richard Entwistle and his off-roading group, PD Vug. I'm only allowed to film proceedings through a window. It's being presided over by an inspector appointed by the government. Each side puts its case to the inspector. In the end, the inquiry comes down on the side of the off-roaders. They have successfully shown that the lane is a key part of a network of roads around the village of Eyam.
It breaks my heart. It just does. I've lived and walked and ridden around here all my adult life, and it's terrible what's happening.
This is a huge blow to the newly formed alliance, and they've learned a difficult lesson. The off-roaders are a formidable opponent, well organised and with a vast knowledge of their legal rights. So the Green Lanes Alliance decides to look to the Peak District Park Authority for answers. A special meeting has been called at the Park Authority headquarters in Bakewell. Other organisations, including the police and the County Council, are also present.
We don't want off-roaders in national parks, period.
The general public want the national park to act this way.
A delegation from the Alliance demands to know why Sean Prendergast's department won't close lanes to off-roaders.
It is clear what your duties are. It is also clear what your powers are. You have the ability to protect the environment using TROs. Yet we have heard there will be no TROs.
The perception is certainly the case that this authority is doing less than other authorities. You're saying we're wrong. That's the perception. Please, can we find a way to expedite things more quickly in the Peak District?
I know people that will not come to the Peak Park because of the motorbikes. And that's fact. They will not come here, Mr. Prendergast. You're losing tourists.
I'm not here to lobby for the 4x4s in the same way I'm not here to lobby against them. Now, I don't think you should confuse independence with inactivity. There appears to be, on the part of some people, a sense that we're doing nothing. It's not true. We are responding without fear or favour. And I'm sorry that that doesn't win any popularity competitions, but as a public body, that's how we have to behave. Because as angry as you are, there are other people who believe that there should be 4x4 rides who are equally angry. And we cannot show favour to them either. We have to act in an independent manner, so that every decision we made is justifiable, it's robust, we can substantiate a legal challenge to it.
Can I just close the meeting because it is 4 o'clock and I did...
The Green Lanes Alliance is not happy with the outcome of this meeting.
And the County Council for...
But the authority has a legal responsibility to make sure the park is available to everybody. Failure to do that would be going against the very principles on which it was founded.
All the views that we go to in this park are romantic, definitely. Yes. We always carry vinegar.
You carry that with you, do you?
Yes, because you can never put enough vinegar on in the chip shop. Oh, I mean, one of our favourite places is to stop in Bakewell and take the fish and chips and walk along the river.
Right.
That's another lovely place, Bakewell.
Or we drive out, we get our fish and chips in Bakewell and drive out to Longstone Edge, which is it's a better view than this, actually. This is a really nice view, and it's good when the fog lifts, but the view from Longstone Edge is even more stunning, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes. You can see a lot
So there's
further.
different combinations of views and chips that can be had.
That's right.
Depending on your mood.
Well, the other thing is we'll stop at the fish and chip shop in Bradwell and drive to Lady Bower Lake.
And have them there.
Or Lady Bower
Which is
Reservoir.
another stunning place.
Stunning
That
view.
is my absolute favourite.
Is it?
Lady Bower Reservoir, yeah.
In spite of the disappointment of the meeting with Sean Prendergast and the Park Authority, there is some good news for the Green Lanes Alliance. A few weeks ago, the Park Authority revealed for the first time ever it was considering closing a green lane to off-roaders. It's called Chapel Gate, and it's just outside the village of Edale. This badly eroded lane is going to be repaired by Derbyshire County Council, but the Peak District Park Authority is concerned the erosion is also spreading to the land either side of the lane, and for that reason is considering closing it to traffic. Sean Prendergast and his team want to put an experimental traffic ban on the lane for 18 months to see if the land can repair itself. But they cannot just impose the ban straight away. They need to undergo a lengthy public consultation first, and then get the decision approved by the authority's board members. As part of the consultation, John and Joyce and other members of Rocking the Boat are taking a look at the route.
Right, can I check, love, is this SK01 E02?
Yes.
Damage to this section is very severe due to the combined effects of vehicle use and water erosion, resulting in increasing damage to the footpath. The footpath has thus been widened and deepened. The area of bare ground has expanded and is further open to erosion.
Sue, I think this is probably a mud flap off a 4x4.
While we're on Chapelgate, looking at the views, it occurs to me why this campaign means so much to people like John and Joyce. This is not just a national park. It's the landscape of their life story.
That round, grassy hill is Grindslow Knoll. I proposed to Joyce on top of that hill. I sort of stumbled into it, and Joyce said, yes, when? And there we were, engaged, out of the blue.
It was romantic, yes, because this is an area we loved. We still love, yes.
Sue and Chris Woods also have a confession to make.
It was after the emotional stress of going along Striding Edge in a snowstorm that we first made love.
And he knew I was afraid of heights.
If the Park Authority approves the closure, it will be a huge victory for the newly formed alliance and a turning point in the battles over green lanes.
If we go for an order, if it's an 18-month experimental order...
A few weeks later, it's time to discuss the findings of the consultation on Chapelgate. Over 500 people have responded. Lots of them are off-roaders opposing it. Mike Rhodes reads out one of the comments.
You are unfairly discriminating against one particular user group for the perceived enjoyment of another. That's discrimination.
I think if that were true, it would be, but that's not what we're doing. You know? We're not doing this because the ramblers don't like motorbikes in the countryside any more than we'd be doing it. They don't like horses or they don't like mountain bikes. We're doing it for very, very clear environmental reasons.
Environmental reasons, absolutely.
I think we've already reached the decision that we're going to go members with this.
After analysing the findings, Sean's team is recommending the Park Authority Board vote to impose the ban on off-roaders. The board meets in a few weeks' time. Back on Chapelgate, the trail bikers greet the news with dismay. They believe their rights are now being slowly eroded.
A bike has no larger impact than a horse, you know, and the horses are allowed to roam freely. You know, we're not for some reason, you know. We've only got limited access now.
But there's miles and miles of footpaths available. I'm not telling anyone where they can and can't go and walk. And these routes are here and legal. I don't see why I should also be told where I can and can't ride. If it's legal, then we'll ride it.
60 ramblers do far more damage to a path than one motorbike.
Why do you think it is the ramblers, you know, if you're not causing any damage, don't want you in the area?
Well, because they kid themselves into thinking that, you know, it's a pretty green England of 1950, where everything was ginger beer and sandwiches, you know.
It's springtime.
About to have public debate on this issue. So permission has been given, and I've assumed...
The board members of the Park Authority are considering the recommendation to ban off-roaders from a green lane for the first time. The 11 board members who will vote on the TRO are either elected parish councillors or people appointed by the government. Campaigners from both sides of this battle have come to listen to the meeting.
What we have to remember is, A, that we've got to respect differing views on this issue,
The chairman introduces the debate.
Is to the natural beauty of the park.
We can't stress too strongly the importance of this to the local communities.
One of the board members, Professor John Herbert, appears critical of Sean and his team for not acting fast enough.
Why has it taken so long to set up the Chapelgate experimental TRO, and could we do it quicker in future if other such occasions arise?
I don't think that it has been unduly long. It's been careful and it's been considered and it's been through proper processes, and we're very, very clear as to why we are making this recommendation in this particular case as opposed to other recommendations which have gone in other cases.
Local communities don't understand this. Local communities want action, and they want action fast, and it's an example where we as an authority have a different view of speed to the rest of the world, it seems to me. So,
Then Professor Herbert brings into question the Park Authority's whole policy on off-roading.
I do think it is absolutely crucial that we have a thorough review of our existing policy. I hope that we will now be looking seriously at other similar places where we should also be doing TROs, either experimental or permanent, and I move the recommendation, Chair.
Chair, if I could second that.
Then it's time to vote.
All those in favour of the motion?
The vote is unanimous. Chapelgate is to be closed. For the first time in its history, the Park Authority is banning off-roaders from a green lane. But that's not all. Because of the strong feelings of the members, it's also going to review its park-wide policy on all green lanes in July. John and Joyce asked me to drive over to Great Longstone after the meeting to tell them the result.
Hello, Richard. Hello. Nice to see you again.
Richard, how did it go?
They approved it.
Approved?
Oh, great.
Approved?
Sure, for sure. Oh, great. Whoa, smashing.
The delight in Great Longstone is not shared by the off-roading community. A week later in June, on a day out off-roading, Richard Entwistle tells me his organisation is planning to fight the decision.
So all is not lost, but it's on the slippery slope to being lost.
And the experimental traffic regulation order?
The experimental traffic regulation order.
One thing I have learned about the off-roaders in the making of this film is that they're not prepared to give up the green lanes without a fight.
It's been proposed for illegitimate reasons, for the wrong reasons, or invalid reasons.
Yes, that's a difficult one to answer because we're not the legal minds.
No.
And although we can supply opinions till the cows come home,
and do,
then it's the legal people who have to decide on what sort of challenge will work in court.
And there are some legal people who are actually working on this at the moment for the user groups to see what sort of a case we can make.
So it's got until
mid-July then?
Until mid-July to mount a legal challenge.
In June, a few weeks before the Park Authority Board makes a decision about its whole policy on off-roading, I'm out and about in the park with the Chief Executive, Jim Dixon.
Just mind the traffic as we cross along here.
When I started filming, Jim maintained his authority would not close lanes to off-roaders. But now, that might be about to change.
I can see our members taking a different decision. I can see our members saying maybe we need to put a bit more resource into the issue of off-road vehicle. Ultimately, it is possible that we could reduce the scope for off-road vehicle use such that there is a lot less overall use by off-road vehicles in the Peak District.
But Jim has a word of warning for anyone who thinks the answer is simply to ban all off-roaders from the park.
One of the great achievements of this national park in its early days, and one of the huge drivers for its creation, was to create more access to the countryside. So the Kinder Trespass in 1932, these great people were fighting for access to the countryside. So if we're going to be withdrawing rights of access, we have to be very, very careful that we're doing it right.
In July, just 2 weeks before the Park Authority makes decisions about its whole policy on off-roading, I'm meeting up with villagers, horse riders, cyclists, people I've got to know over the past year in the Peak District.
How are you, Sue? You in good form?
I think so, yes. We've had a good walk here. We've already walked 4.5 miles.
Is that your bike there?
It is. Just get me on the flat bit so I look good when I...
These campaigners are not in the mood to heed Jim Dixon's message. In fact, in an act reminiscent of the famous Kinder trespass, they are marching together up to one of the Peak District's most famous sites, Stanage Edge. Unlike the Kinder Scout trespassers, these campaigners are marching to keep people out of the park, not make the countryside available to everyone. They've successfully got a ban on Chapel Gate. Now they want off-roaders banned throughout the park.
When people in the Peak District don't like something, they start walking. When people couldn't get onto these moors, they march, trespass, to show their hunger to get on them. And today we've all walked here to send a strong message to the Peak District National Park Authority. Get tough. Stop all off-roading activity. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day and a great picnic.
This was the last time I filmed with the campaigners. The Park Authority did meet, but decided not to make changes to its off-roading policy until later in the year. But there is a change on Chirpit Lane. Some traffic calming signs have been put up. It's a small victory for Joyce and the villagers. But they are continuing their campaign to get the off-roaders banned.
Well, it's nice to be back up here, Joyce.
Yeah, yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You can look on me. Eh?